Welcome to the Empowered Catholic Podcast with Karen and Curtis Herbert, where we combine the best of theology, science, and coaching to inspire your empowerment. It's our mission to help you release the inner obstacles that are holding you back from embracing true Christian freedom, so the power of the Holy Spirit can manifest in you. So if you believe that God has more for you, if you want to believe that God has more for you, listen on, my friend.
Hello and welcome to the Empowered Catholic Podcast. I'm Curtis. I'm here with Karen.
Hi, everyone, and good job, Curtis. You got the name right.
Yes, I have struggled to get it right, but I've got it right. And we do think it's the right word, empowerment. And today we're going to talk a little more specifically about empowerment. And I think we're really going to highlight what the Holy Spirit's got to do with it, how it fits in. And as a reminder to our listeners, last episode, we talked about, how Karen and I feel like we're called to share this empowerment, this concept, this idea, this practice, this worldview. And we shared about the themes of the podcast. And we invited you, my friends, to join with us on this. And so, Karen, what's a way we can understand empowerment?
Excellent. Yeah, we're getting to the good stuff here as we dig into this season, different ways of understanding empowerment and how it shows up for us. And obviously, last time we mentioned, we're talking about the power of the Holy Spirit here. And that's pretty amazing. It's pretty mind-blowing. And so
it is amazing. And I think this episode's going to bring up one of the most overlooked aspects of empowerment. And so I really invite our listeners to stay with us and learn what that is. Okay.
So, do you want me to start, Curtis? Do you want to start?
Did I interrupt you? Go ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. What I was thinking was, we have this power of the Spirit, and there's so many things that the Spirit does. There's so many things that this powerful, awesome, amazing reality does in the world, in heaven, in God's plan. And there's a couple of things that are particularly relevant to the kind of empowerment that we're talking about here. A couple of things that the Holy Spirit does. Can I share?
Yeah, the Holy Spirit does many, many things.
Many things.
Here are two very important things that the Spirit does.
Yes.
That are as related to empowerment. I'm ready.
Exactly. You're ready? Okay. One is the Spirit takes broken, sinful human beings and remakes us so that we can be true image bearers of God. We can become persons who truly step into our vocation as people in the image of God, who we were created to be. And the Spirit transforms us and overcomes all of the obstacles and blocks that have entered into our true vocation.
That makes me think of a mirror that's kind of cracked and chipped, maybe got a couple little pieces missing. And wow, it's hard to reflect back to God what all that He has in creation for us. But the Holy Spirit is mending that. And as we become healed, we get this energy and we're starting to see, now I can see kind of in this mirror that's me. I can start to see what it is I'm created for.
Yes, and I think that's a distinct and separate but very connected thing that the Holy Spirit does, which is gives us this new energy and direction to enter into our human vocation.
So on one hand, I'm healing is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Other hand, I'm hearing new direction.
Exactly. And they're two sides to the same coin, really. And ultimately, the Spirit is really intended to animate the whole person. It is the giver of life, and it's constantly at work giving life to the whole person, which is important. This is one of our themes, as we mentioned last time, is focusing on the whole person because we are multi-layered mysteries. We have a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical aspect. And all of those are meant to be animated in the power of the Spirit.
And so the Holy Spirit, it's like coming down from on high into us and animating all of that. You like to talk about a prism, how it's coming in and it's being reflected and energizing all those aspects and surfaces.
Yes, and that's a good way to understand empowerment. When you're empowered, all of those aspects are free to reflect the person that you're created to be and to reflect the image of God. You can almost think of it as like a little pyramid, okay? So that's the spiritual at top, and then the mental, and then the emotional, and then the physical. It's almost like a trickle down effect, right? We want the spirit to be able to trickle down and infuse all of the layers of our person.
I really like this. Is it a metaphor or analogy? I always get confused, but it's one of those. And what I like about it, Karen, is it shows how when there's more of God, there's more of you. And those things that need to go away in you, those are, call them obstacles. That's the not you that needs to go away. And so where there's more of you, oh Lord, there's more of me. And I feel like this is an important principle to hang on to that's kind of guide us through our life in the Spirit.
This is actually, as I was thinking as you were talking, this is very similar to what Paul is talking about when he says that the Spirit is at work transforming all of the parts of the human person, how we think, how we feel, how we behave. It's at work transforming our mental, our emotional, and our physical layers.
The Spirit is at work transforming us. And so tell us more about empowerment, Karen. What's a way to explain this?
Okay. All these ways we're talking about empowerment, they're less of a definition and more of a description. So we're describing empowerment. And just to pull this together, when you're empowered, all of these aspects of your person is receiving the energy and the life from the Spirit. And like Curtis mentioned, the Spirit is shining through like a prism, and it's able to reflect itself in each area of life. So there's kind of this alignment and congruence in the whole person that's able to be animated by the spiritual. When you're empowered, you don't have a bunch of blocks and obstacles to the flow of the Holy Spirit. It can be experienced and reflected in each layer of the human person. So this is one way of thinking about empowerment.
So let me emphasize this. This is really what we're talking about. And like a lot of really anything that's truly important in life, you're not going to reduce it to a formula or some simple logical syllogism or an easy definition. And I want to invite our listeners just to think about what we're talking about here. This idea that, well, when you have this alignment throughout the whole person with the Spirit acting through the spiritual faculties that you have through your mental and emotional life and working down into your physical life, as this all starts to come together, as the person is integrated, then you're starting to have this empowerment. You're being animated by the Spirit, which is really, it's the promise of Pentecost. It's the promise of Isaiah or Jeremiah, that your young people will prophesy and so forth, that the Spirit is present in all of us. And yeah, removing obstacles is a big part of this. And I think I keep coming back to this because this is the thing that's so often just not appreciated, that overcoming this baggage that we create for ourselves is so critical.
Yeah, and it's just part of our life. We live in a fallen world. We've created a bunch of obstacles and blocks, and there's a million different reasons why that can happen and ways that can happen. And I think we all desire fundamentally to release these. Often we're not totally sure what they are, and we're not totally sure how to release them. And that's the beauty of empowerment, is that there are ways to release these things and let them go so that they're no longer blocking your path to moving forward.
Removing these obstacles, really, this is foundational to empowerment for most of us most of the time. And it's pretty much the first step. At the same time, Karen, action is required.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
So we could remove obstacles. But if I want greater health, I could be inspired. I could be motivated by the Spirit. But there's going to be things I have to do, things in my physical life, as you were. And there's really no substitute. It's my job.
Yes.
That's my job to do that. And I can't avoid the necessity for me to take action now that the Spirit is showing the way for me. And I bring up the physical first, but I want to make the point that, well, it's the same in the mental and emotional areas, right? So if I've got a bunch of anger and I'm praying about it, that's really good. However, the Spirit can be inspiring me and motivating, yet there's still going to be things I have to do. If it's anger, then that's mental and emotional life, and I have to work on that. I have to do these things. There's no substitute for that. Just like taking action for my physical health, there's no substitute for me acting. It's still my job to do my part in dealing with my anger, even as I'm inspired and led by the Spirit.
Yes. And here's my experience, both personally and working with clients about removing obstacles, is that when you do release, the really deep-seated beliefs that are connected to the anger, or the unforgiveness that's connected to the anger, then all of a sudden there's more power to make the choices that you really do want to make and to take the action that you really do want to take. It's like it makes it easier to step into the action because you've released those things that are making it really hard.
Right. And all of a sudden, you're going to have new ideas about where the Spirit is directing you because your vision is starting to clear up. Or it's like the radio signal, it's starting to come in strongly all of a sudden. You're not under the tunnel or whatever because you've moved out of that obstacle.
Yes. And there's greater freedom to say, oh gosh, I really can choose this when I want to. And there's just something about getting through that first step that makes the following choices and actions easier.
Are you ready for an example, Karen?
I am.
So, Karen, you'll remember we went on a long training. It was about 2 weeks. And there was a lady there, and let's just call her the mom.
Okay.
So the mom, she was a lady. She was over 60. And I don't know. I think maybe she had a past accident or something. She walked with a cane. Something had happened to her. And at the beginning of the week, she shared that she would take the elevator, even though she was on the second floor of the hotel. And I think her physical therapist kind of wanted her to take the stairs, and we would go over and sit with her. She would sit kind of on the edge during the breaks, and she's very interesting, had been through a lot in her life.
Oh, I super enjoyed getting to know her, yeah.
And as we went through the training together, as we did work on our baggage, everybody's unloading their baggage.
Oh, yeah, it's really fun. F-U-N.
It is so fun. And we could see people all around us, they're just lightening up. And there was one day where we were out in the courtyard, standing there in the grass and the California sun, just having this really pleasant conversation that went on. And we were called in from the break, and she stopped and looked at us and said, I've been standing here talking to you for 15 minutes. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I could stand for 15 minutes. And I didn't even think about it. I was just out here, and I'm realizing that I created all these limitations for myself that if they ever were true, they're not true for me now. And I can do so much more. And it was really big for her because she loved nature. She lived in a beautiful part of the world. And you could just see horizons opening up for her.
It was really delightful. And then she kind of got on a roll and started talking about all the things that she didn't used to do, 3 days ago that she was doing. And it was so encouraging. And it just gave us the beautiful image of, here is healing of a different nature that is allowing really the energy and the life to flow in her body and show up on the physical level.
So Karen, you've got your own story in the physical realm. Maybe you'll share that with us sometime.
Yeah, I think maybe we'll have it as something to up and coming.
We'll get it out of you at some point.
Yeah.
So with this lady, the mom, her challenges were squarely located in the physical, yet it was the mental and emotional shifts that helped her realize that there was much more possible for her physically, and then she could start to take action in the physical to reach things that were so important to her.
Exactly. And it just goes to show that the whole person is interconnected, and these multifaceted layers, they relate to one another and they affect one another, and they determine a lot in terms of how we're showing up in the world in different areas.
Yeah, and just to make the point that all of these things were not fully conscious for her. I mean, she just kind of knew what her limits were, and she was doing a good job, I think, of accepting them. She was not a bitter woman by any means. She was kind of worn down, maybe. And the conscious and the unconscious mind, I mean, so much of this is in the unconscious mind.
That's a really good point, Curtis. The obstacles and blocks are very often hidden in the unconscious.
Yeah, and I want people to be comfortable with the idea that, hey, there's a lot going on in my unconscious. I mean, did you know you have an unconscious mind? Of course you do. For instance, you're walking around. That's an incredibly complicated process. It involves all these muscle groups and neural pathways and training and muscle memory and sensory integration. Yet we just walk around thinking of something else all the time. We barely give it a thought. And that's our unconscious mind just taking care of it for us. And this is very familiar to us. So I want people to be comfortable, talking about, hey, let's learn how to get the unconscious mind to work for us as smoothly as possible.
Well, here's the thing, Curtis. I think what you're touching on is another really important way to look at empowerment. Because when you're empowered, there's this integration between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. So your conscious mind is the one who wants to direct your life, who wants to make a goal, or who wants to set a direction, or who wants to achieve something, or who wants to make a decision. And your unconscious mind is taking care of all these things at this deeper level to support you in all of these things that you're deciding. But if there's a disconnect between the pattern that's running in the unconscious and the thing that you want at the conscious level, that's not empowering. That's a disconnect and a division. So when you're empowered, you have this integration between your conscious and your unconscious mind, and you know how to relate to your unconscious. So you give it some thought. You think about, well, how am I going to get my unconscious on board? What does it need? How are we going to do this together? Because again, that's another way of talking about being a whole person.
Right. So how many of us have ever had the experience of setting an ambitious goal, and then weeks or days later, it's just not happening? The 5 a.m. Christian yoga prayer contemplation thing just fizzled out for us. And we thought consciously, oh yeah, we need this. But our unconscious mind was sort of like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe it's really difficult for some people to even set a goal. And that means that there's something going on in the unconscious where your conscious mind isn't being allowed to do the fullness of its job in setting the goal. And so there would be some obstacles to take care of around that.
That's right, Karen. And well, we started off talking about the Holy Spirit. Can you sort of loop that back in?
Sure. Well, it's always fun to talk about the Holy Spirit. And hopefully this connects, because what came to mind just as you asked me that is I've been watching this video by one of our favorites, Tom Wright, and he was making the point that when we're dealing with the Holy Spirit, we have to take responsibility for our own growth and development in working with the Spirit. And this is what comes up in Paul, because he doesn't often tell people in Christian communities exactly what they should be doing. He gives them principles and encouragement, but he says you have to think through what this all means for you. What is the Spirit doing? What does God want to do? And you're responsible for how this works out. And this also is a description of empowerment, is fully taking responsibility for what this is going to look like in our life. Even if I'm not controlling it and the Holy Spirit is the director, I'm responsible for what happens.
The Holy Spirit is directing, empowering, probably smoothing the way. And one thing then we can think about as we are getting these promptings, or what we think may be promptings, we can think about, well, what is it I need to do? What is it I need to do in my mental, emotional, physical, conscious, unconscious realms? What is my part in this? Boy, St. Paul, man.
He's
he was
amazing.
A smart guy.
I'm looking forward to getting to know him.
Oh, I think I'd be intimidated.
Okay, friends, we are super glad you are here with us on this empowerment journey. We hope we've given you some things to think about this episode. Join us as we continue to dig into this really, really interesting mindset as we move forward. And come on over and check out our new remade website, empoweredcatholics.com.
Thank you for being here with us this week. Visit our website at empoweredcatholics.com to learn more about us. And remember, as Pope Francis says, God comes to break open everything that keeps you closed in.